No one tells you that an empire can die from the bottom up, that one day the man wearing the crown might go out not by dagger or poison or rebellion, but by diarrhea, violent, unforgiving, bowel-scorching diarrhea, the kind that starts as a whisper in your gut and ends with you slumped on a throne you never earned, leaking out your legacy one bowel movement at a time. His name doesn't matter. It's been scrubbed from most scrolls. Some say it was Jovian. Others suspect Carinus. There were plenty of bloated, wine-swollen emperors to choose from in Rome's decline. But this one earned his place in history not through conquest, not through reform, but by soiling himself in front of 20,000 people while watching men butcher each other for sport. He didn't start out as a fool. Or maybe he did, but nobody noticed while he was swinging a sword in the legions. He was once a soldier, tough, capable, respected. But once he slipped on the imperial robe, everything changed. Gone were the knights in tents and blood-wet armor. In came the feasts, the women, the sweet, greasy decadence of unchecked power. The man who once marched for days now waddled between banquets, and what he couldn't conquer, he consumed. On the day of the games, he arrived bloated and bejeweled, stomach bulging beneath layers of embroidered silk. He waved to the crowd like a god descending from Olympus, settling into his golden viewing seat with the smugness of a man who believed himself immortal. The arena below was soaked in sand and old blood. Gladiators stood ready. Trumpets blared. The empire applauded. And then his stomach made a sound. Not the polite grumble of hunger. No, this was a roar. A deep, bubbling threat from within. He shifted in his seat, shrugged it off. After all, he had eaten enough salted boar and fermented figs to bury a goat. His intestines were probably just doing their job. He raised his goblet. He smiled for the crowd. He gestured for the games to begin. The first kill of the afternoon went unnoticed. So did the second, because the true battle wasn't in the arena. It was in his gut. A cramp gripped him like a fist made of fire. His smile faltered. His hand tightened around the goblet. A bead of sweat crawled down his temple. But still, he didn't move. He couldn't show weakness, not to the crowd, not to the Senate, not to the gods. Another kill. The crowd roared. The emperor clenched. He was dying, and no one knew. He thought it would pass. It didn't. It got worse. His breath shortened. His vision blurred. And with every twist of the knife below, another part of his dignity leaked away. The crowd cheered for blood, and the emperor sat perfectly still, praying to every god he'd ever ignored that he could hold it in just a little longer. But Rome had other plans, and somewhere, deep inside him, dinner staged its final revolt. Below, the sand turned red. A net fighter drove his trident through a Murmillo's stomach. The crowd screamed with delight. But up in the imperial box, the emperor couldn't even pretend to watch. His eyes were locked forward, his jaw clenched, every muscle in his bloated body committed to a single goal, not exploding in front of the Roman elite. His vision swam. The sunlight burned. He was sweating through imperial silk and gold thread, somewhere between the flamingo tongues and the honeyed oysters from breakfast. A decision had been made inside his guts. A rebellion had begun, and now the Emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the known world, was losing a war against his own stomach. He shifted. Too fast. Too far. That's when it started. Not the grand, theatrical collapse that poets might later romanticize. Not the silent, tragic death of a noble leader. No, This was the soft, unmistakable hiss of wet betrayal. It soaked into royal linen, trickled down his thigh. The Emperor of Rome had just shit himself. A senator seated nearby flinched. A slave girl froze mid-pour. One of the bodyguards exchanged a glance with the other. They all knew, but no one moved. No one dared speak, because the man melting in the golden chair was still the Emperor. And if he chose, even now, in this moment of digestive apocalypse, he could have every last one of them flayed alive. He waved weakly to the crowd. They cheered again, unaware. Below, a gladiator lost his arm. Blood sprayed across the sand. A clean slice, spectacular, worthy of applause. The Emperor coughed, not from illness, no, not yet, but from the effort of pretending everything was fine. His face had gone pale, his lips were cracked. The wine in his goblet had turned to vinegar on his tongue. He wanted to stand, to flee, to collapse into the arms of his physicians and beg for mercy. But he couldn't, because emperors don't run. Emperors don't groan and clutch their bellies. Emperors do not soil their robes in public. That's what peasants do. That's what slaves do, not gods. But he was not a god, not anymore. A second wave hit, stronger, angrier. His back arched, his mouth opened in a silent scream. He gripped the arms of his throne so tightly the wood creaked, and still, he sat. Somewhere, a young boy pointed up at the imperial box. His mother swatted his hand down. The guards were already whispering. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. One of them stepped closer, only to be stopped by a hand signal from the emperor himself. He would die with dignity, or so he thought, because when his bowels finally gave way, when the pressure building inside him exploded like a siege engine, there was nothing left to pretend. He convulsed once, then slumped. The crowd cheered, thinking he was laughing. The trumpet blared for the next match, and the most powerful man in Rome quietly drowned in his own humiliation. His guards rushed to his side. Too late. His heart had stopped. His eyes were open. His mouth hung ajar. His body was warm, but empty. The crowd never knew, but everyone in the imperial box did. And by nightfall, the legend had already begun to spread. His name was Marcus Aurelius Flavius Jovianus Augustus, Emperor of Rome, defender of the Eastern Front, supreme commander of the legions, crowned by generals, hailed by senate, worshipped by statues, and now decomposing in his own filth, while the city burned incense in his honor. The official scroll said, a sudden illness, some tame nonsense about fatigue, dehydration, fever. Physicians were summoned after the fact and ordered to write what was needed, not what was true. No one mentioned the smell. No one described the stain. No one detailed how Rome's sovereign shot himself to death above a pit of gladiators while smiling for the crowd like a wax dummy. But the guards knew. So did the concubine who cleaned the cushion. So did the scribe who burned the original seat. So did the boy who saw the body slump sideways and later mimicked it for his friends in the alley behind the temple. Jovian's death was not a tragedy. It was a farce, a grotesque, ironic, fully Roman moment, a death so perfectly pathetic it circled back to being glorious. Not glorious like Caesar on the Senate floor, not like Antony in Cleopatra's arms. No, Jovian died like a man who mistook decadence for divinity and got taken out by a stew of oysters, goat milk, and ego. They wrapped him in purple. They loaded his body onto a chariot, face covered, robes bleached. The seat was burned, the cushions replaced, everything scrubbed and sprayed and sanctified. And when they paraded him through the forum, They said he died with honor. The people mourned. They threw flowers. They wept, but not for him, for the idea of him, the illusion, the mask, the god on earth, who, in the end, was just a man with guts too soft for power. And that's Rome, isn't it? You rise through violence, ascend by betrayal, rule through fear, and still, you can be undone by your intestines. Marcus Aurelius Flavius, Jovianus Augustus, did not die in battle. He did not die in a palace coup. He did not die in the arms of a lover. He died on a golden seat, gripping the arms of his throne like they were lifelines, while his bowels staged a mutiny loud enough to silence history. You won't find his death carved into marble. You won't see it painted on ceilings or honored in textbooks. But the guards remember, the slaves remember, the floor remembers, and deep in some archive, a scroll with a brown-streaked seal tells the truth that no historian dares repeat. Rome lost an emperor to diarrhea.